There were some things that I did pull out of the book that I would love to discuss here just as a teaser. One of those is and this was fascinating to me. I don't know if you got to this part, Darren, the Masogi Challenge.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Explain what a Masogi Challenge is. Let's talk about that for a second.
So I meet this guy whose name is Marcus Elliott. He is he's a far out guy. He got himself through college by counting cards. He would go to Burning Man back when it was like this little thing just full of weirdos. So he's a far out guy, but he's also insanely brilliant. He got his MD at Harvard. And while at Harvard, he decides, I want to get into sports science. So he doesn't go the typical doctor route. His first job out of Harvard Medical School is a job with the Patriots. Now, when he got on the team, this was, I think, the early 2000s, they had a super high injury rate, especially with hamstring injuries. Now, at the time, athletic training is basically, we're going to tweak some sets and reps and maybe some exercise. Like, there's not that much science behind it, right? So he goes in with his big brain and focus on data, and he does all these very customized programs to focus on this one injury problem they have, which is hamstring injuries. And he drops it down from 26 to 3 a season. And they really start winning. Of course, Tom Brady helps.
The GOAT helps.
Yeah. But he was influential in that, keeping guys on the field. From there, he was the MLB's first performance director, and now he owns a company called P3, and they have a contract with the NBA. And what they do is they use really deep data and algorithms to map player movement. So they'll attach all these reflective things to players, and they'll have them go through all the different movements they would make in the game. And so using this data, they can basically say, look, the way, for example, your knee is moving, we think you have a 50% chance of getting an ACL tear this season. And this is based on thousands of other examples. They can also tell you, you know what, you're really, really good at this skill. So you should develop that, because that's something that is kind of like this little untapped gold mine that you're not leaning into. So I told you all that to basically tell you that, 1, this guy is really smart. 2, he is very data and science oriented. But he also realizes that what improves everyone from pro athletes to the average human can't always be measured. So to get into those qualities that you just can't track with science, those sort of inner, that inner whatever gear that certain athletes have, he does this thing called Masogi Challenge. And it's based off this ancient Japanese myth that is essentially a hero's journey. So you have this in the story, you have this hero who, goes in, leaves this comfortable world. He goes down into this really trying middle ground. He really struggles. And then he manages to break through, and he comes out on the other side, an improved person, just better in body, mind, and spirit with better capability. So he'll get guys, and based on this idea, he gets guys a lot. Some of them are pro athletes. Some of them are just, friends, whatever. And they do what they call a Masogi Challenge. So every year, once a year, they pick some big, weird physical task in nature, and they decide they're going to try it. They're going to tackle it. Now, the rules of Masogi are 1, that it must be really hard. And they define really hard by saying you have to have a 50% chance of finishing, a true 50% chance. So this thing better scare the crap out of you, right? You're like truly not sure if you're going to be able to do it. And number 2 is that you can't die. That one's pretty simple.
I love that rule.
So, and then there's a couple guidelines. One of the guidelines is that it should be weird and kooky. And this is so you can't compare yourself to other people. Because a lot of times we go out and do physical things just to compare ourselves, right? It's like my neighbor ran a 3:05 marathon. I'm running a 3:03. That's my goal, right? But that's comparison shopping. You're not really doing it for you. You're doing it for some other reason. And then the second guideline is that you don't advertise Masogi on social media. That goes back to the fact that, who are you doing this for? Are you doing this to get some likes and followers, or are you doing this to learn something about yourself? And so they have done things like, one year they get this 85-pound boulder, and they walk it 5 miles underneath the Santa Barbara Channel. So one guy would dive down, pick it up, walk 10 yards, drop it, come up, the next guy, so on and so forth until after 5 hours, they've moved this boulder across the channel. They've done pretty simple things where they'll, go out and just, okay, that's the farthest mountain we can see. Let's try and get there in a day. Now, what happens is, as you're doing something like this, you get into this middle ground where you really doubt yourself. You're like, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I don't know if I can actually do this. This seems like I'm going to have to quit. But by putting one foot in front of the other, or whatever it is you're doing, if you're swimming, one more stroke, you all of a sudden reach this edge that you thought was like where your tipping point is, where your stopping point is. And then you look back and you realize, well, oh, I thought that was my edge, and yet here I'm still going. So that edge is in a new place. And that becomes really enlightening because you realize you've sold yourself short. Right. It's like, okay, I finished this thing that I really didn't think I could finish. And if I sold myself short there, what else in my life am I selling myself short on?
Yeah.
Right? It really asks you, it opens up a lot of questions in your mind. And then number two is like, you face some real fears out there that are really similar to the fears and challenges that we used to face in our recent past. And then when you go back into your sort of modern normal life, stuff like giving a presentation in front of your boss becomes a lot easier.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's about the experiences.
When you think about challenge today, or in the past rather, even think like 1,000 years ago, humans face really legit challenges, even a couple hundred years ago, and that could be moving from a summering to winter grounds. And let's say you have to go over some mountain pass and the weather's coming in. It could be from something like a hunt, right? It's like you're low on food. We have to go out on this really epic, dangerous hunt, or else we're going to starve. It could be from like a tiger in the bushes, And every time we would complete one of these challenges, we would learn something about ourselves. We would grow as humans. We would improve in our ability to just take on the world more or less. But nowadays we don't have those, I just mentioned like giving a presentation, like that is our challenge.
Right.
That's not really teaching us that much about ourselves. There's not a physical element. There's not an emotional element. There's not really a spiritual element either, which a lot of these had. And so sort of the message of Masogi is that I want to reintroduce these metaphorical tigers back into my life so I can learn something about myself and come back into my normal life improved.